Welcome to Faith Fondue, a podcast featuring author and speaker Haley DeMaria and teacher and blogger Ann Strickers. Faith Fondue will feature a melting pot of topics, ignited by a flame, our faith, and guided by the Holy Spirit. It is the week of October 3rd, the 27th week in Ordinary Time, and San Francisco Giants are still in first place. The Irish lost a football game they should have won, and whether you like him or not, Tom Brady returns to New England tonight in must-see TV. Good morning, Ann. I hope you are ready to listen because I am ready to rant. How are you?
Oh boy, okay. Here we go. I'm good, Haley. I look forward to talking to you or listening to your rants. And following up from last week on just all that it takes to make a sporting competition go. It seems like you had an inside perspective on that. I want to talk about a book I'm reading and the power of relationships between coaches and athletes, but also coaches to one another. And then maybe just some more of your rant and a program I saw, as well as the importance of gratitude. So we'll hopefully bring this full circle, Haley, right?
Yes.
Let's go. Start.
All right. Yep. So first, before my rant, I do want to follow up on our conversation from last week about sports and what it takes to, make any sort of competition run and function. So this past week, I was asked, they asked for parent support helping to run one of Edward's water polo games. So, water polo is an interesting sport. You have the clock that can be kind of complicated. There's a lot of whistles. You have to know when to start, when to stop. It's kind of a judgment call in terms of, pausing, the time. Then, of course, there's the shot clock that adds complications to it. There's and then of course different machines that run the clock for water polo. So sometimes the shot clock resets automatically with the time clock, game clock, sometimes it doesn't. So I was asked to run the clock because there aren't that many people who know how to do it. And then a couple of the other parents kept the sheet, so you have the clock and the sheet keeps track of the score, fouls, assists, all kind of those stats. So,
the books. Yep.
The books, exactly. So, it was interesting, especially in light of our conversation last week, just sitting on the pool deck with two other parents and just kind of watching a little bit from the inside what it takes to run a game, right? There's two referees. Of course, they have to be there. And listening to their conversations, a little closer because I'm on the pool deck and hearing how they converse during the game. Also what they're asking us, water polo has this thing called ejections. We think of ejections as getting thrown out of the game. Ejections are actually fouls where you just have to take a 20-second break. It's kind of like a hockey penalty. And then you can come back into the game. But after 3 ejections, you get rolled, which is actually getting ejected from the game. So, there's all these complicated rules. So, they came over all the time. Who has 2 ejections? Who has 2 ejections? They're, then you kind of feel like they're looking for the ejections. But anyway, I was very grateful for their help. I was grateful to the coaches who were there that, kept checking in on us to make sure that as parent volunteers, we felt comfortable with what we were doing. And then I watched at the end of the game, the swimmers in the pool, the water polo players. Boy, hope Edward doesn't hear that slip of the tongue.
Your perspective.
Get in the pool and, pull the lane lines across. Of course, water polo is played in a pool with no lane lines, but most pools are used for swimming. So they had to pull the goals out of the pool. And then you had to have the players, pull the lane lines and swim them across and just reset up the pool again. So yes, an extraordinary amount of manpower, pretty much all volunteers that went into this one, less than an hour water polo game. So gave me a great perspective, kind of made me smile the whole time thinking of our conversations. That's one game on one afternoon, in one pool. And this is happening in thousands of places all over the country, really all over the world. So again, a shout out to the support staff. We see you.
Yeah, that's great. I was just trying to describe that to somebody because I'm like, somebody has to turn the lights on and somebody has to turn them off. I mean, that's the bottom line, right? And I felt like there was no sport with more of that time involved than rowing. So I coached crew for 2 years. Haley, I did not enjoy it. Now, I loved rowing, but of course I loved it because you have to rig and de-rig. You know, for the boats, the way the setup works with the oars, they're on these riggers, but when you travel, you have to take them off. And then you have to put them on and then balance the boat. And if you're with your friends doing this, it's great. If you're the adult overseeing the teenagers or the young people doing the rigging, it's not great. And there was just so much of that time. So that memory came across my eyes. And then there's, the race itself. So you're right. Thank you for seeing us, for helping our listeners to see. I think that's really important. I also think just that language of sight and vision is a big part of sports and spirituality in my class. Like, what do we see, but what are we able to kind of comprehend? And then, language, just even the language of water polo, ejections and getting rolled. I didn't know that. And it's interesting because ejection is a strong word, isn't it?
Very.
For a 20-second timeout. I mean, obviously you're putting your team at risk, but it's interesting to learn some of that.
Yes. Yeah. Well, the first time it happened 6 years ago when Edward started playing something, oh, he got ejected. I said, what? He got ejected. And then, it does. I don't know of any other sport where you get ejected from the game and then you get to go back in.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the fun things about sports as well, or is the very specific sport language that's, kind of fun to learn.
Yeah. Well, I want just to talk a little bit about, coaching, which is a, sequitur from there. So a friend gave me this book. It's called Coaching and Teaching Generation Z, which are the kids right now, Honor the Relationships. And it's by the special teams coordinator, Brian Polian. He's at Notre Dame, but he was the head coach at Nevada Reno. His father is like a legendary coach and whatnot. And there's two parts to this piece of the flame. The first part is the book, and it's just his experience of working with athletes and the importance of the relationship that's built. And I know that would resonate with you, knowing how close you were to your coach at Notre Dame. And then just tips and ways to connect and how you have to, give feedback and where to give feedback and how to do it and different things. Like nothing that I don't already know to a large degree, but it's just kind of reiterated and spelled out. It's funny though, because as I'm reading it, I've always felt the best part of coaching for me, it hasn't been the relationships with my athletes. In fact, it's been the relationship with other coaches. And I have made so many friends with the other coaches that I've worked with that are in the league even, that we see regularly, like to the point where I kind of collect them and they're in my life. Like I've gone to their weddings. My job right now I got because I'm friends with the coaches at St. Francis from cross country. So it's just interesting. I would like to know what he would have to say about that, because I'm sure his father was a coach. So obviously that relationship is sacred. And with young people, it's great, but you might have them for a year or 2 years. Maybe, somebody like me, I get girls sometimes for 4 years. But just a different perspective. And that resonates with an event we did this week. We are 6 weeks into school. Teachers are and coaches in particular are just burnt. They're just like, wow, this is a lot. And, we're back full speed. Everything's just back. And I don't know if I've talked about it before, but there's a reason there's not more female head coaches. So we had our head coaches meeting on Tuesday morning, and I'm one of 3 for 26 varsity teams. And I will tell you why there's not more female head coaches, because it just is too much time. It's just not going to change. The reality is that most women, I think they take on more in family life. No offense, men, they're great. They help us do. And if you have young children or just children, it's just not realistic, the hours involved. And the 3 of us don't have kids, so it's kind of interesting. Not that I've worked with head coaches that have young children, and I just see how tough it is. And I've worked with 3 of them, so I don't want to say they don't exist. And with all due respect to them, I'm in awe of them, and also their spouse, because their spouse puts up with a lot. But I told the director of athletics, I said, women just carry things differently. And I said, we're all just like, can I do this? Can I make it? We're tired. We're just like, I don't want to have that attitude of like 5 more weeks, like countdown begins, because that wouldn't you wouldn't allow yourself to be in the moment of the season. So I said, what if we get together and we'll have margaritas and chips and salsa, and not to just vent or rant, but also then to share that, but also to share kind of like what have been some highlights, what are some work-life hacks that you might have that you can share, and then kind of like what are you looking forward to. So it was very important. It was very meaningful. It was great to get together. Everybody was so appreciative of it. My boss was like, should I come? And he's like, I want to come just to support. And we're like, no, do not come. But it was great that the point is he wanted to support us. So if anyone, is in a group or something, just supporting women by giving them that time and that space just to be together, whether it's community, but also just like sharing, I think that sustains us in a way that, now we're like, okay, I got some ideas. I feel better. It's still hard, but I can do it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I don't know, I would be curious to learn, to read more about this and kind of do my own data analysis and figure out, I'm thinking of some of the female coaches I know, most of them are at the collegiate level, where they're in a position where, they are either the primary breadwinner or they have husbands who are in jobs that, can be flexible like that. Because you're right, one of the reasons, even when I think about coaching, or have thought about it over the past several years, my first thought is, no, I don't want that time. I want to be able to go watch my own kids play. And, so are the dads not going to watch their own kids play? I don't know what that answer is too, right? If you're coaching after school every day and your son has a game somewhere else, I guess you aren't going. And maybe men are able to do that easier than women. I don't know what it is. I'm not saying one is right or wrong. Sure. But I know for me personally, that's time away from my family. I'm not willing to give up, or wasn't willing to give up at that time.
I think, Brian Kelly spoke to that. He said he went to 2 of his son's high school games, and his high school football games. So, there's your answer for, sacrifices they make. And I mean, obviously he's at a D1 collegiate program, but, he took some fire for a quote that he said about executing his players. And he was like, it was a joke. And I was like, of course that's a joke. This man has made, and his wife, his family has made tremendous sacrifice, and he's not asking us to feel sorry for him. That's not the point. It's like of course he cares about his players. That's not, a realistic takeaway from that quote. But yes, all coaches make sacrifices. Thank you, coaches, for what you do. And Haley, I hear you. I talked to a former colleague. She's the director of admissions. I said, Christy, you would be a great coach. And she said, I want to coach my daughter's team. And I said, do it. I said, there'll be time for you to coach at another level, and I think you'll be a great coach. But right now, you should absolutely, if you can, work with your daughter and enjoy it, because she's she works full time. She's a huge job. I hear you.
Yeah, that's interesting. It'll be something to kind of keep our eyes open for.
Sure.
Yeah, to figure out what's going on. Okay, so my rant.
What happened? Yeah.
Well, so there's a couple of things here. And first, let me start off by saying that I am fully aware of the many aspects of this story that I should feel grateful for. And of course, that will lead me into my spiritual stew, certainly, the idea of gratitude. But the quick story is I think it's probably known to most people, maybe not. If not, they can find out now. I have lingering nerve damage from the bus accident and my injury. So there are just some things that require maintenance. And especially as I get older and things change, I have to be aware of them. So there's a quick, and I say quick because it takes 10 minutes, procedure that I do probably twice a year. And it really helps with some of the nerve damage that I live with. So this procedure, again, it is 10 minutes. Now, the first rant is this procedure can be done in a doctor's office. It can be done in not a surgical room because it's not surgery, but it can be done in a doctor's office. My insurance will not cover this procedure if it's done in a doctor's office. They require that I be admitted to the hospital for this procedure to be done.
Wow.
So, the first thing I want to point out is I'm lucky to have insurance that covers this, right? And I'm fortunate to be able to pay for the amount that is not covered by insurance. So I am very aware that there are so many people out there that don't have that luxury and that benefit. But I'm still going to rant about this because this procedure, so it's, again, 10 minutes long, can be done in a doctor's office, but they require me to be checked into the surgical unit as surgery in the hospital. So that requires getting there 2 hours early. It requires being checked into pre-op, going through all of the pre-operative, checks that required to be done. Of course, you go to a hospital, you have to have a negative COVID test to get in there. So there's, I had to make sure that was done, which is fine. I get tested at school. That's not a hardship for me.
Right. Yeah.
And then, then you have to be, you are in full blown surgical mode, which is basically, your sheet, your robe. And you have the hat on and you get wheeled into the operating room and you're in an operating room and you have to have at least 3 nurses there because that's required for, being in the OR. There's a certain, there's a mandate that you have to have a certain number of nurses. So all of this goes, and then you have all of the, the surgical stuff that has to be taken care of. So the fact that I have to have this procedure done in a hospital is insane because according to the doctors, it costs 9 to 10 times more for this procedure to take place in a hospital than it would just doing it in their doctor's office. So it's just, this is just the insanity of our healthcare system.
Yes.
And insurance companies, which really, they're great because they allow me to, pay for and function like a normal person sometimes. But they are paying so much more for this procedure than they would need to if they would just let me do it in the doctor's office. So that's rant number 1. There is things like this make no sense. And I don't get it. And trying to talk to anybody in insurance, they don't care. So that's one. That's my rant. Again, I'm very grateful I have insurance, very grateful they pay for this. It's a little insane that they're willing to pay so much more money for what seems to be like a coding glitch. The second thing is this 10-minute procedure that normally, in the hospital is probably 2.5 to 3 hours, because of course I have to be there 2 hours early, and then you have to go to post-op recovery room afterwards. And so it's normally about a 3-hour time chunk. Well, yesterday, Friday, when I was there on Friday, there's a nurse shortage at our hospital. And there is a nurse shortage because we still have a number of COVID cases and the COVID floor is full. And nurses are burnt out over the past couple of years. And
they need a night for margaritas and chips and salsa.
They need a year for, margaritas and chips and salsa. So because I'm at the hospital and I have the required 3 operative room nurses that, need to be there, and there's a nurse shortage, I had to wait an additional 3 hours until a nurse became available to join us on this 10-minute procedure. So my 10-minute procedure ended up taking almost 6 hours in the hospital. And again, I'm grateful I could have it. I'm grateful that insurance helps pay for it. I'm grateful I can cover what insurance doesn't, but it's a little insane. I'm grateful I have a job that, can give me a day off. Friday was no, blink of the eye for me to take Friday off. Most people don't have that luxury. So I don't know. We need to pray for nurses and we need to pray for our healthcare system. It is broken. And, and again, I'm one of the lucky ones. This is a story that really frustrated me, partially for me, but mostly because if I'm having this trouble with a pretty simple procedure, I can't even imagine what, millions of Americans are dealing with trying to just function and get through, any health crisis that they might have. It's really, again, really frustrating, not so much for me, but just for our healthcare system in general. It's broken, and that's really the simplest way to put it. So there's my rant.
I mean, I was just talking about my heart issue to a friend last night, and I was talking literally about, I was moved from one hospital to the next in the city, and I was put in an ambulance, and I didn't need to be in an ambulance, but that's how they had to do it. It was a $900, I call it a taxi ride.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to see that on the bill because, some things you're just curious about, like the Medtronic device is $90,000. Okay, well, that one I get, but $900 to transport me 2.4 miles, like I don't even know what to do with what you've presented, other than, you said that the system's broken. This is clearly something that's so out of whack. How do you deal with kind of just, I mean, you're the one in it too, but like, I'm sure you've talked to your husband about this, and like, what do you think?
He agreed. Well, I mean, this is probably a whole topic for another podcast, but it's complicated, right? And of course, it's so much of it is financial, and so much of it is kind of a power trip. Our healthcare system is broken, and no one is willing to concede anything to fix it. And people have different ideas about what healthcare should look like too. And, and no one's willing to compromise, and no one is willing to actually just deal with healthcare, right? You look at Obamacare and what all was in there, and there was so much that had nothing to do with healthcare that was in there. And could you please just address healthcare as opposed to like shoving other things in there that you want to get passed? So I'm not going to get political here. There were a lot of things that were really great about Obamacare, but the fact that there were people were trying to pass other things is super frustrating. So I don't know what the answer is. I just know that we need to do a better job taking care of our most vulnerable in health and otherwise. So again,
tough.
But that again leads me to my spiritual stew, which really is that sense of gratitude. When I was first, bumped, when my OR room was first bumped in the hospital, I was told it was because there was an emergency that needed to get brought in. And I thought, okay, well, someone's having a worse day than I am. I'm laying here healthy in my flimsy little robe, and somebody else needed an emergency room, an operating room quickly. So that was where I started. I was grateful that I was healthy and that, that I didn't need to be rushed to, the ER or the OR. But I read a quote shortly after I got home from this longer than necessary stay at the hospital on Friday. And it's a quote by Brother David Stindl-Rast. And I don't know who that is, but I loved his quote, so I looked him up. But he said, the quote is, "The root of joy is gratefulness. It is not joy that makes us grateful. It is gratitude that makes us joyful." And I thought that's perfect and so true, because the most joyful people are the ones who are grateful. And I think people wait for the joy to find gratitude. I think people wait for life to be good and for something positive to happen, or to, whether, it's have enough money or healthy enough, or all of the things that people think make them, joyful and grateful. I think they wait for that. And the root of joy is gratitude, and we can be grateful no matter what we have, or in spite of everything we don't have. Being grateful and gratitude, that's a choice. That's a choice every day to see and find the goodness in whatever we have and wherever we are. So I love that, because that's something we have control over. Joy, sometimes we don't. Life is tough, and we don't have always a choice over whether life is easy or hard, but we certainly have a choice over how we view it and what we're grateful for.
Yeah, Haley, thank you for the quote, because I think we talked about it when we talked about your favorite thing, thank you notes. But yeah, they were like, studies show that happy people are not grateful, but grateful people are happy. And I really appreciate that. I just think that quote captures it so well. So, that's the principle there. But by this religious brother, it's beautiful. And one thing I've been thinking about, because I do agree, I think there is that relationship between gratitude leading to joy. On a surface level, I think people know we're supposed to be thankful. We're taught it, it's modeled. I have really tried to encourage maybe my team and my students to think about appreciation. Because I think to appreciate something is to kind of hold it and recognize it. And then that kind of yields the gratitude, I'm aware that I get to play golf today, there are crazy things going on in the world, and yet I get to play a game, or on Friday, it was such a beautiful day. We haven't had many of them, to be quite honest. And it was such a moment just to behold, I appreciate that the sun is on my back, and then at that moment, your gratitude. But I've always thought the word Thanksgiving is a good word, because by Thanksgiving, it's an active word. I think by giving thanks, we're supposed to, do or give or, for others. So maybe that is a good takeaway for people, just to consider appreciation, gratitude, and joy. And I'm thinking about my past week. My piece of the spiritual stew is, this might have been in the homily last week, but the pastor was saying Pope John Paul II, his chair when he was, in the Holy See, he said, I am the servant of the servants of God. And the servants of God are us, the faithful. And he felt he was the servant of all of us. And we've talked a lot to athletic leaders about servant leadership. Mm-hmm. And it's such a great thing to invite anyone to consider, myself included, because I think when we're in service to others, we see their appreciation, right? We can see their joy, their thankfulness. Not always, right? But small example, my friend is at a new school where her son goes. They take the bus home. They have to change lines twice. It's just kind of a long day. And they live near me, and I said, oh, can I give you a ride? And she was like, you are the bomb, you rock. And it was so easy to do. It wasn't hard at all. And she was so appreciative. And it just kind of made my day that I was able to do that. Yeah, I can give you a ride. It's just, that's, life is sweet when you just, I talked about this last week about charity, but it's just reaching out, in service to others. It takes an openness, I think, to be in service to others, an awareness. And St. Francis had a huge win in football. And the director of athletics said, this is the time that people are really looking at you after the win at school. How are you treating other people? Are you boastful, or are you opening the door for somebody? Are you, moving out of the way so somebody can get by? I mean, I worked with this one person. I hated walking with him because he always picked up trash, but he was totally right. He saw the trash on the ground and picked it up. Takes, but a minute. So I appreciate, and I'm grateful that I learned that through Chad, but really servant of the servants. That's such a great reminder.
Yeah, that is a great reminder, especially for someone who, most people look up to as a leader. But I have always loved the term servant leader. I think those are the only kind of leaders we want to have, are the ones who are willing to roll up their, shirt sleeves and serve.
Right.
That is true leadership in my mind. So
yeah, we need good leaders. Just tying it back to what you're saying about healthcare. I mean, I when you say healthcare is broken, Haley, I hear that in the context of so many different things. I hear so many different things are broken, and if we only rest there, we have to name it and recognize it. But it's hard for me because it's I know there's a lot of things that are broken. But the other side of that coin is that there are solutions. There are things that people can do. And let's pray for people who are willing to just literally get in and do the work. I probably said this when I was at Notre Dame. Father Jenkins said, we are concerned about climate change. We have solutions. We know that this is a problem. We can mediate. And it's because there are intelligent, thoughtful people that are working toward it. I mean, what is the point of a higher degree? Other than it's not a prestigious point, it's because you are endowed with gifts and capabilities, using our minds and our work ethic. And, as a high school teacher, like I have those kids that are locked in and they're working hard because they have a future, and there are other kids that are just press play. And I want to challenge them and encourage them. Like, life is not about Instagram. It's just not. There's a lot of forces that are saying it is. Right. It's not about your appearance. I mean, there's so much more to you and to everyone. I mean, what we can do if we use our own gifts and talents, right, for the good of others, in service to others. But
and you work with young people too, so you see this all the time. They don't know life without Instagram and social media. So it's we see the bigger picture, and we see that there's more out there, but they've never lived a life that has that. We, on a completely different note, we were talking about that a little bit last night with the Notre Dame loss. When you and I were students and Notre Dame lost a game, you kind of went back to your room after the game and you wallowed with your friends, and but it was just you guys, right? It was just us. It was us on campus. It wasn't everybody on ESPN and social media and Barstool and every other school and all of we were bombarded last night with the whole idea that Notre Dame lost, and the students, I'm sure, felt that as well. It's everything is magnified, everything is to the extreme and polarizing, and that's a problem all around. In healthcare, in social media and football games. It's really a challenge. So I think that's why our faith is so important, and I think it is why having and finding gratitude is really. I know the way you and I try to live our lives, we might not always get it perfect, and I certainly have my moments where I need to rant. So thank you for listening to that. But there is that balance. I do feel like we try to have and try to help others see. Of balancing what we're grateful for and seeing, life through a different perspective. So I am grateful for that. And I'm always grateful for our conversations because they give me something to think about as well.
Hopefully something to chew on, like we say in our spiritual stew.
Yes, exactly. I will walk this week with gratitude for sure. I also am going to do a little more digging into Brother David Stindl-Rast. I think, your idea of, we've talked about this before, of Thanksgiving being an active verb. We're just a few short weeks of getting into that season of giving thanks. And I'm thinking one of his books might be a good November read for me. So
that's smart.
Well, we'll see. I'll look into that. But as always, we are grateful for those who are putting together our sporting events. We are still praying, I know, for everyone dealing with mental health. That has not gone away, nor will it. So even when we don't bring it up, it's still out there. But Anne, I hope you have a great week. I hope your golfers do well. I hope the Giants are still going to be the number one team in the National League when we're...
Historic season, 106 wins. They have to win today. It's the magic number, Haley. They win or Dodgers lose. Just the number is 1. And, yesterday was not a great day. I didn't rant about my day, but, when Notre Dame lost, I said to myself, Giants are going to lose today. I know it. I just, which is terrible to and they did 3-2 and the Dodgers won. And it's such a great time, sports fans, for baseball right now because, even in the American League, there's so many different, games your Orioles, matter. Winning 2 games and, it's just so interesting, all the different things that are going on. So check in with that.
Absolutely. Well, and again, kudos to all the people behind the scenes who are making those games happen. All right.
Thanks be to God for them.
Yes.
Have a great week.
You too. Thanks, Anne.